Hi. Okay. So there's kind of a glare. I'm not really sure how to fix it. Um, but I'm kind of this week, the full moon is tomorrow, and this whole week I've been really struggling. Honestly, this whole year had so much shadow work come up and just a lot of things to move. And something that is like really important to me right now is just keep moving it. So I have some cacao here, which, I do think needs to be used very intentionally, kind of depending on your culture. And I also have been working a lot with mimosa and tobacco to keep moving things. And so I'm kind of experimenting with the way that the videos go as far as what what the vibe will be each time. And so today I was like, the way that I'm gonna show up, I'm trying to do it every week, is going to be if I can be outside, if I can just, come as I am. So that's what I'm doing. Though I did put these earrings on because I love these earrings. Okay. So the topic for today, and isn't this mug cute too? Okay, the topic today is sacred disagreement, which I had talked about last week. And this topic hasn't really been on the top of my mind this week, but it has been a topic in my mind, for a long period of time. So we'll see what we end up talking about here. So what I would say is I think it's a lot more deep than we realize, this conversation. So I just think of, and as I had said in the last video, it's not necessarily like disagreeing with every single person. Like if there's someone who's just completely, like you really have nothing in common with, like you don't even imagine yourself ever being in community with them, maybe it's a question of like, I guess it's a question of what we define as our community. If, we're like, when I want to focus on community building and culture change, I really want to focus on like my city, then like thinking about what your scope is. Or but you might also be like, well, we need to figure this out by our country. So then someone whom you might not want to work with closely, if you want things to be in community as far as culture change throughout the country, maybe you do have to interact with them because we have different actors, different people. But then maybe if someone's from a different country, maybe it's not necessarily that you're putting them in your scope of community and community building, as far as just defined here, as far as like moving towards a new system together in community. And so I'm always so interested in thinking about how do we blend, the wisdom of our ancestors, all of our ancestors who lived with the land, who had true community, who had healing as part of the culture, had a lot of weaving between spirituality and, our material lives. And then today, what would actually work today? And sometimes I don't think that necessarily always means that we're going to go exactly to the way things were done, because also there's a difference of time, I found a lot of indigenous cultures that are still around today. There has been a lot of fragmenting and trauma within the culture. So I've seen a lot of ways that people are still trying to figure it out and learning and trying to put together the pieces again, but don't necessarily, it's not like it's been a continued lineage. And in ancestral healing, that's talked about too. I've been taking a class with Daniel Four, and they talk about like a continuous lineage of healed ancestors, like thinking about that period of time, and or healed, also healed elders is what I think about now. But that might not be, we might not be able to think of anyone like that or any groups like that. And so how do we build our communities to be more like that? And And so my argument is that we really need to build the muscle of disagreement. And so there's a lot of layers to this. And I'm like, this video is only 7 minutes, 10 minutes. Okay, it's already 5. But it's also been fun because I feel like on YouTube videos, because they're, people watch them for longer generally if you want to. It feels more conversational. So that's fun. But in my brain, kind of just like there's a lot to everything. A lot of thoughts. So for community, or how do we, like, what does that mean? And again, I'm not talking about just, the person who's like your frenemy, like you need to figure out how to work it out, which that skill is something that's helpful for us. But there's also the people who aren't our frenemies, who are people that we want to be in relationship, people that we already have relationships with, our friends, the people we're around, our families, that we haven't really built the muscle of actually being in disagreement with each other. And so what does that mean? What does that look like? And what are the muscles that you have to build? And so I remember I was talking one time with some people, and I was saying, like, as someone who's really intuitive, my perspective, I'm sure they have a completely different perspective, but my perspective is that, my intuition works in ways that I can see certain ways that we're functioning that isn't very useful or helpful, or like ways that I wish that it's almost like we have a sensitivity to something. So if someone is very like environment is their thing, they're gonna always see kind of like the ways that, let's say, an organization or a group that they're in isn't really functioning best for the environment. And then another person might have it for racial justice, another person might have it for healing, or like, there also can be nuances of what exactly they're seeing, right? And so in these conversations, like I might bring up something like, that I feel in my mind is truth, that sometimes are hard truths, like that, of just like the things of how things are functioning now, that people, like, for example, that people are choosing to participate in some of these systems for survival. That's a fact, right? And like we might think of, there might be people in our lives that we see that do that, and that's also a fact. And I guess like what I feel like the muscle that would be developed if we had elders that were wise elders, like as a culture, is that we'd be able to really hear these truths and be kind of like called out, but not in like a cancel culture called out, but just like, hey, when you did that, that created some harm. And like, but because they're in a healed place, they could present that information for you. Sorry if the glare is kind of distracting. They could present that information to you in a way that is still, again, creating this like bubble of safety that makes you feel like you can go through your nervous system can go through the cycle and still feel like you belong in the society, you belong in the group, you're still loved. The person's telling you with a lot of love, and so then because of that, your nervous system can handle it and go through and acknowledge it. And then with the acknowledgement, there's opportunity to change. Whether or not you want to or not is a whole other thing. But at least I just feel like there's so much power in being able to see ourselves even as a culture, right? And acknowledge it. And even just like in modern day culture, it's like I might, work for a company that I really don't agree with, like if I really think about it ethically, because it's like I need to help support my family. But then also because I'm acknowledging it, I might realize like, okay, you might like make choices as a result, like well then I'm gonna want to make sure I'm really boundaried with like how much time I'm giving them, so that I can use the rest of my time in ways that feel really like aligned with my values and creating the values I love in the world. Or you might say like, I want to work there for 5 years, and then after the 5 years I want to move to something that is in my values. But if we can't be with that, the fact that we're interacting in the world that way, then we can't make any choices. Sorry if I don't know. I think it's just the sun, and because there's also a tree here, and I think it's just gonna be this way. So it's like having that ability to really, I think I said this in the last video too, but it's like shame can be really paralyzing. And so instead of like when we see ourselves, when we see our truth, like honestly, like even in my own shadow work, shame still comes up. It's probably going to still come up for a long time. I don't know. I can't imagine a near future where it won't, but it'd be cool if it doesn't, like culturally. But it's like being able to at least get past it so that you can actually take action. Because a lot of people, if you've done, shadow work, you see that like there's a time where you really see yourself and you're like, oh, wow, I've been doing that in my relationships this whole time. Wow, that's really awful. Like, oh my gosh, it can be hard to be with, and like be with that in a loving way, and then move through it. And so it's the same thing in a cultural perspective of like being able to see yourself, of how you're participating, and change. And so we need to be able to have more disagreements. Like right now, even on like the political, things are easier to divide in political, but like on the scales or whatever, the groups, it's like even within a group, even if you're in the group, you might not want to disagree with people. You might feel like, well, this is what people are saying, so I should say that, I should do that too. And the thing is, it's just, I don't think will ever be the best way for us to create like the best society ever, right? Or the best culture, the most healed culture, because everyone has blind spots. And if we can't have conversations like in a way, and we can't handle it, then like we're not going to be building the best culture ever. And something that I think is really interesting, and I've always thought is interesting, is like how, like in a logistical way, how does the world change? And you can look at like the periods between big culture shifts or societal like collapse and shift, or government changes or revolutions, and it's like, okay, this is what the original intention is, then how did it become this? And I don't think there's a lot of examples that aren't more like indigenous, like community with the land-based cultures that embody like really kind of what we want to move towards. A lot of the times it can end up being the same old energy, the same old like, okay, we're in a different thing now, but it's also still kind of oppressive in ways or whatever. And so how do we shift out of that? And I think we're gonna have to have really hard conversations in a community. We're gonna have to be like really questioning things and really talking about things, and we're gonna have to be able to deal with that in our nervous system. And so other things that we have to be able to do that, or like skills we have to build, is one big thing I've been working on now is like individuation, like really being okay with being completely different than the group. Completely different. You might have you might be the one person in the whole group that feels a certain way, and being able to be comfortable owning that, owning your own wisdom, owning your own truth, and that. I'm trying to think of the other things. There's a lot. Like everything could be like a multiple conversation thing. That's the thing I like about workshops, is because I like to it to be back and forth, because then usually people will be like, well, what about this thing? And then it helps me think of the other things. Maybe. Yeah, and also be okay with like being the only person that has a different opinion. Also being okay with everyone else having a different opinion as you. Like, I feel like there's two parts of that to me. Maybe it doesn't make sense, but and so this is just something to, I think, observe more just in your everyday relationships. Like, do you feel comfortable saying no to people? Do you feel comfortable when other people say no to you? I think there's a lot of subtle ways that this topic, like we can be exercising these muscles of being able to have a disagreement. Also, like how much practice do you have with other people who are willing to talk about things, actually talking about them? And if like, and not everyone is willing to talk about things. So maybe it's like focusing on building more relationships with people who do want to have, you know, harder conversations where, you know, you say like, hey, when you said this to me yesterday, I really hurt my feelings. Or I didn't like that. Can you not do that again? And then can you handle if someone says that to you? And it's funny because those things can be subtle, but it's helping us practice this muscle of being within a group and being able to have harder conversations and practice the nervous system and like the body part of it that can be okay with it. And you'll see if you start to like open up to this, that you'll see how your body, like how, I'm guessing most people still have more to expand in this area. So you will see where maybe you need more expansion. Okay, I think that's pretty much it. If anyone has questions, you can put it in the comments or message me. Yeah, because like I said, I feel like all this stuff has a lot of layers to it, but I think that's enough information for this. And yeah, thanks for following me. Right now I am doing one-on-one healing sessions. I'm thinking about doing more stuff that's kind of focused on people who are trying to connect to living with their purpose. And so a lot of things, I really have been talking a lot lately about like whole person healing. And so we can think of like, oh, healing is here and my life is here. But usually what's preventing us from living the lives that we really want or feel like totally aligned with our hearts has to do with healing and doing things on a body level. And so yeah, sorry, I got a message that I think is I have to handle. So so yeah, so we have to figure out on a body level. So it might be like stepping more into your purpose means like working on things that how you were bullied when you were young, which then makes you feel really like a lack of confidence and putting yourself out there at work. And so then it's like you're afraid of speaking up. But it's like, you know, all these things that can mean very little. It doesn't necessarily mean like just finding your purpose, because just finding your purpose there's not really a destination. It's gonna unfold. And like also being with that, like how do I make sure I'm moving towards that? Yeah. So that's something I want to move more towards within my sessions too. And then I've been doing monthly workshops, sometimes a few times a month. So you can also find them on my website, more information about that stuff. And I hope everyone has a good weekend. Bye.